Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at Gamemax's Brufen C1 ARGB case. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at Gamemax's Brufen C1 addressable RGB case. This is a ATX compatible case, which is also compatible with ATX, micro ATX and ITX motherboards should you wish to. Comes complete with 4 addressable RGB fans and doesn't cost an absolute fortune. So on paper, it sounds like an absolute winner. So in today's video, we'll go through, do a teardown, look at all the individual components, and we'll try and give you some idea if this case is going to be suitable for your next build. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the case itself. We'll do a quick tour around the outside, and I guess with this kind of case, the looks are what it's all about. There's a lot of cases on the market which come with addressable RGB fans, there's a lot of cases which come with front ventilation, but I think with this one, the look and the actual design of it is relatively unique. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. So looking at the front section first of all, which is possibly the most striking part of it, so we've got 2 separate panels here, which are both metal, and this is a 1mm mesh, so plenty of airflow getting through to those 3 120mm fans. You can, if you want to, you can replace those fans behind with 2 140mm, or potentially it does say in the instructions that you could put 2 200mm in there, although I don't think that is likely. Most people are probably going to stick with the standard default configuration, which actually works really well straight out of the box. Moving up towards the top section, so this is our front I/O panel, and actually on here we've got a pretty decent selection of ports. So we've got a USB 2.0, next to that we've got a reset switch, next to that we've got a separate microphone and headphone jack, and then we've got a pair of USB 3.0 ports, which is really nice to see. Quite often cases in this kind of price category, you're generally stuck with just 1 port, so having 2 on there is a great addition. Also, talking of great additions, underneath this we've got 2 separate buttons for the RGB lighting, one of which controls the actual lights themselves, so you can cycle through the different styles, and the next one is actually a brightness button, so if for some reason you don't like the brightness of your RGB LEDs, you can just adjust them by pressing the button on there. Again, a really nice addition. And in the middle of those 2 buttons there's a really nice Superman style logo power button, which also lights up RGB. Moving around to the side of the case, so we've got this really nice tempered glass side panel, which has got a really delicate smoke tint to it. Also on the side there is this really nice little loop, which you can use to actually open the side panel. It is secured with magnets, so closes pretty nicely, and it's got a pretty decent swing to it, so you can get access to your components and do any modifications or any adjustments to your system that you wish to. You can, if you want to, whilst you're in the actual building process, you can take off this glass panel. It's just on hinges and pins, so really nice and easy to remove. Before we take a closer look inside, we'll take a continued tour around the outside edges. So on the back of the case, pretty much a standard layout here, so we've got space here for either a 120mm fan, or if you want to, a 120mm AIO cooler you could put on there. There's a little bit of vertical adjustment on there as well, so if you want to get the fan just right for you, then you certainly can do. We've got the traditional IO shield cutout here, which is all nicely rounded off. We've got the PCI Express expansion ports here. Sadly, on this particular case, these are actually captive ones, so you do have to bend them out and remove them. Not an absolute deal breaker, but would have been nice to have seen them to be removable ones, which you can replace should you need to. Moving down towards the bottom, we've got our power supply basement section, which will fit pretty much any standard size ATX power supply. Moving around to the back side of the case, now this is where things get a little bit interesting and is one of the defining characteristics of this particular case. So as you can see, it's a solid back panel, although there is this cutout here. And there is a very good reason for that cutout being there, because this case has the COC factor, so cooling and overclocking. And this is something which Gamemax are touting in some of their latest cases to actually enable users who want to overclock their rigs a little bit further than usual, a little bit of extra cooling power, which I'll show you now when I take this side panel off. Taking the side panel off does reveal there is also a magnetic filter in here for the included 140mm fan, which as you can see here on the back of where your motherboard would normally go, you've got this huge cooling fan. So this is going to be pulling in cold air from the outside and pushing it inward in towards the back of your motherboard. So that's going to keep cool things like the back of your CPU and also those all important VRMs. Anyone who's done any overclocking will know that as soon as you start pushing the voltages or the frequencies on your processor, your VRMs are the first thing to get hit. And having a little bit of extra cooling power here is certainly going to help keep those VRMs under control. We will be doing a full build in this a little bit later on with my Ryzen 9 3900X and actually seeing if this does live up to the hype. I certainly hope it does. Whilst we're actually in this section, it's probably a good idea to take a look at some of the other features. So we've got two removable drive bays here for 2.5-inch drives, so either mechanical drives or SSDs. You can put up to 4 drives in this case in total. There is a drive sled here at the bottom, which is by default for a single 3.5-inch drive. Although if you want to, you can actually bolt another 3.5-inch drive to the top of it. It won't be totally enclosed, but certainly will hold it in place. You can as well, if you want to, you can put a 3.5-inch drive in the bottom and a 2.5-inch drive on the top. Along with those two, I think that gives a pretty decent selection of drives. Taking a closer look at what is going on back here, we've also got the included addressable RGB and fan hub. So this is a great little hub. As you can see, as standard, there are 4 connections in there already. So that is for the 3 fans on the front and the 1 fan on the rear. These just use the standard 5V 3-pin addressable RGB headers, so no issues with compatibility there. So if you wanted to add maybe an AIO cooler or another addressable RGB strip with those standard fittings on, you can plug it straight into this hub. The hub also has a pass-through, enabling it to be connected to any 5V 3-pin addressable RGB header on most modern motherboards. So if you're using things like MSI Mystic Light or the Asus Aurora suite, that kind of thing, you can control the addressable RGB from either the software, or you can dedicate the control to the case itself. You could, if you wanted to, you can actually plug in the fan here actually into the hub so that all the fans are running at the same speed. That is entirely up to you. Really, I think this fan would be best off connected to a separate header on your motherboard so you can have a little bit more granular control over it. Overall, in this back section, plenty of space to work. You've got lots of cable tie-down points, and also you've got this open basement section to tuck any unnecessary cables. Also in this bottom section, we do get some of our accessories. There is a graphics card support mount, there's all your screws and cable ties, etc. and a pretty decent installation guide. Also, I should have mentioned that the drive caddies that are here are actually on thumb screws as well, so you can undo a thumb screw, and if you want to, you can just pop these out. Another thing of note, which could be a slight downside, is this COC cooling fan on the back here. It is a molded fan which is actually incorporated into this shroud, so if anything happens to it, unfortunately you would have to replace the whole thing. But also, if you want to actually take out to get access to the backplate of your CPU for things like water cooling, or perhaps for a non-standard CPU cooler, 2 screws top and bottom, and this whole section lifts out really easily, giving you access to all the back of the motherboard. Looking at the I/O, it's a pretty decent setup here, and all the cables are nicely blacked out. So there's a section here for your things like reset switch, power switch, hard drive LEDs, that kind of thing. Also, there is the USB 2.0 connector. We've also got the USB 3.0 connector, which has got this nice flat cabling to it. And also there is the HD audio connection, all of which pretty decent lengths, so you shouldn't have any problems with the build. At the bottom here, we've got plenty of room for a power supply in here. So depending on what power supply you're going with, I think most people will probably go with something maybe around the sort of 600, 650 watt, which is normally a traditional size. Obviously, if you're going for something a little bit higher, then you may need to remove the bracket at the bottom for the hard drives to actually get it to fit in properly. Again, entirely up to you. You can remove the drive caddy in its entirety, just a couple of screws on the bottom and you can remove it altogether. So moving around to the bottom, we'll quickly look at those screws. So 2 thumb screws there. So undo those 2 and then that drive caddy will just pop out. You've also got a filter here for the power supply section. It's not the best of filters, but it will do the job. I would have loved to have seen this being on a removable plastic tray or some kind of slide system, but yeah, it does the job. Also, you've got these feet on the bottom, which raise the case off the deck by about 1 inch or so, and they've got this really nice foam on here as well, so it's not going to leave rubber marks on your desk, and it moves around quite nicely, and also will absorb some of those vibrations from the system. Moving on to the top of the case, so we can see here we've got the very, very traditional removable magnetic filter on the top here, so just a regular mesh there with magnets all around it. And you do have options in the top of this case for mounting additional fans should you wish to. Now there are cutouts or sections here, so you can put 2 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. Sadly, because the size of the case, I would say an AIO cooler or some sort of radiator in this top section is probably not the best of ideas. I would stick with fans in this top section. It is relatively close to what the motherboard is going to be inside, so yeah, when it comes to water cooling, you are going to be limited to just the front section, which we'll take a look at now. So taking the front panel off is a pretty straightforward thing to do. There is a grab handle section on the front, so you can just pull out from the front and the whole thing comes out. Sadly, one of the things which I'm not entirely convinced with is the front I/O section being incorporated into the front panel. I would have personally much rather seen that being mounted into the top of the frame, so if you do want to remove the front for cleaning, you don't have to take out all the cables. But on the flip side of that, it does mean that because it's actually on a 45-degree angle at the front, it's actually going to be really nice and easy to see. Should the case be kind of eye level, you can see exactly what the ports are without having to kind of stand up and take a look at what is going on top. So yeah, what the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. So now we can take a closer look at these front mounted fans. So like I said, we've got these 3 addressable RGB fans on the front here. Also there is one in the back as well. All of these come included in the kit. Now I should say, actually, I haven't mentioned this already, pricing wise, at the moment in the UK, this is retailing for somewhere in the region of about £60, which does put it into a pretty kind of competitive market. So it is going to be one of those things where I think the overall look of the system is going to be one of those key selling points. There are a ton of cases around with similar configurations, but I think it's going to come down to looks whether or not you choose this one for yourself. All of the fans on the front have been nicely cabled in and passed through to the hub on the back there, so yeah, that's all really well done from the factory. And you can, if you want to, like I said, you can remove those. There is a section there so you can put 140s in, so 2 140s or the 3 120s as standard. You can as well, if you want to, put a 360mm radiator in this front section. There is a cutout there, so you can put a 360mm rad in there, although you will need to obviously do something with the fans, or perhaps if you're buying an AIO, probably use the fans which come with that. I think water cooling probably for this case is not the best of ideas. I think this really does kind of aim towards the air cooling market, especially due to the fact that we're really going to struggle to put a radiator in that top section. So realistically for me, I think if you're buying this case, concentrate on airflow and concentrate on air cooling rather than water cooling. So looking a little bit closer inside of the case, so as you can see there, you can now see the fan there, so that is going to blow the cold air into the back of the motherboard there, which yeah, is a very ingenious idea. Whether or not it works in reality, I'm not too sure. Gamemax have actually provided some information on the cooling performance on a system they did in their test lab, and it does appear that the VRM temperatures have been reduced in temperature by around about 10 degrees or more, so yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see if that happens actually when we do our testing. I should also mention as well, it's very difficult to get across on camera due to the angles, etc. But the fan at the back there is pretty much flat with the actual back plate there. So some of you may be concerned that the fan's going to stick in too much or out too much. No, it's absolutely fine. It does actually work out particularly well. It's a very well engineered piece. I just hope it works as well as they say. So looking further inside, we've got all these cutouts at the top here. So if you want to put fans in the top, RGB fans, you've got lots of room for running cables through. Lots of cutouts. No plastic grommets sadly on this, which would have been a nice thing to have seen, but for me personally, I'm quite happy with just cutouts. When you've got the system built, if you've done it tidily and you've got the back panel on, you can't really tell if there's grommets in there anyway, so yeah, for me it's absolutely fine. The mountings in here, again, you can use extended ATX, ATX, micro ATX or ITX motherboards in here. You've also got this basement section, which has got a couple of holes cut out for it as well. So if you wanted to, you can actually mount 2 120mm fans onto this basement section to take some of the cold air which is being blown in from this front fan and then readdressing it up towards your graphics card. Again, entirely up to you if you wanted to do that. There's also 3 nice pass-throughs at the bottom there. So 1, 2, 3. So one for maybe your front I/O, USB, and then HD audio. So those are in absolutely fantastic places. So overall, actually a really nice case, very well laid out, and it's got pretty much everything you could want straight out of the box. Obviously, for those of you that are interested in cooling or lighting, yeah, it is all here. We've got 4 fans, so it's pretty much fully populated. You've got the addressable RGB controller, so if your motherboard supports pass-through, you can use that. If not, you can take advantage of using the controller built into the case. So yeah, it is ready to go pretty much out of the box. So what I'm going to do now is put a power supply in here quickly, just so we can light up the fans, just so you can get an idea of what it actually looks like when it's all lit up. So there we go, there is the case lit up, and as you can see, it actually does look stunning. I really do like the look of this, with the fans all going to the light. Now this is the default, which is just straight out of the box, literally just got a power supply in here. We haven't got a motherboard in, obviously, so this is just taking power straight into the controller. The controller actually uses a SATA connection, which if I spin this round, you can see I've used a deliberately cheap power supply to give you some contrast there with the ketchup and mustard. So power supply wise, you can see there's tons of room in here to actually put in a larger power supply should you need to, loads of room for cabling, etc. And the SATA connection goes into the bottom of the controller there. to power the whole thing. So that powers the addressable RGB, and also when the fans are actually receiving the signal, it duplicates that signal to the 4 or possibly 5 connected fans. So that is all done by a single PWM 4-pin connector, which you plug into a chassis header on your motherboard. So nice and simple to do. It does exactly what it's meant to do. I have actually tested this out with PWM control and it works perfectly. So that is sometimes an issue with some of these controllers on cases where the PWM doesn't always kind of tally or relate to the speeds effectively. But yeah, it seems to work absolutely fine. So we've got no issues there. Moving back to the actual lighting itself. So again, as you can see, the lighting does bleed through quite nicely. Some people may disagree with the bar design at the front because it does kind of chop out some of the lighting, but actually I think it makes it a little bit more discreet. So you've got the RGB lighting behind there, but you've got this sort of blanking section at the front, so it's not entirely in your face, but still does pass through an awful lot of light. And also it's going to pass through an absolute ton of air. The mesh is extremely open. Some people may see that as also as a downside, because obviously the more air you're getting in, there is no other filtration other than this metal mesh on the front. So it is going to pull in dust, so if you're in a particularly dusty environment, then it might be worth looking at possibly a different case, which is kind of where I am with this case, to be completely honest with you. This is, well, there is a massive elephant in the room, and that big elephant is Gamemax's own F15M, which is essentially the same price and is a very, very similar specification. Difference being having 2 massive 200mm fans on the front rather than these 3 120s. Similar sort of price, and yeah, a very similar configuration. So that is a potential kind of snag, really. They are competing actually with themselves, in my opinion, although the F15 is a bigger case overall. So yeah, it depends on the look you're going for. I said it at the beginning and I'll say it again, this case is going to appeal to people who actually just appreciate the look of it rather than the actual rule specifications in price. So anyway, let's try out some of these buttons. So this is the button for changing the RGB, so you can press that and you cycle through the various modes which are enabled in there. So you've got like the blue and white, you've got your unicorn puke, red color schemes, all that kind of stuff. There's a good amount of color options in there, so if you have got a slightly cheaper motherboard that doesn't have addressable RGB, I think you'll find a lighting style which works for you. And also you can, if you want to, you can change the brightness. Now the brightness changing doesn't really reflect on camera as it does in real life, but it does actually get quite dull, and obviously it turns it off entirely, so you can just press that and it just cycles through. There's about 5 different lighting levels there, including off. So yeah, a little bit gimmicky. I'm not sure whether many people will actually take advantage of that, but the fact it's included is, well, I guess it hasn't increased the cost much, so yeah, nice to have it. Also on the back there you can see you've got the fan on the rear, which is the same as the front one, so again keeping it all nice and kind of in the same colour theme and colour schemes, etc. So yeah, overall I think this is actually, it's a very interesting case. The COC cooling for cooling and overclocking, I think that is a very novel idea. I don't recall seeing it anywhere else on the market. Whether or not they patented it or not, I believe I read somewhere they did. So this is going to be something which is going to be seen on other cases as well. I believe they are going to be integrating the COC fan into the Gamemax Diamond as well, which some of you may have already seen. If not, we did a review on it ages ago up there. It doesn't have the fan in it, but newer models do appear to. So certainly it looks like a way that Gamemax are headed. So anyway, let me know what you think about this one in the comment section below. Like I said, we will be doing a full build on this as well, and actually testing out the COC to see if it does make a valid difference. Hopefully you're as excited as me to actually see if it does make any real difference. So I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.